coming up on today's show, we're going to give you access to a report card. Oh, it's not on your children or your grandchildren. It's on you and your retirement. We're going to tell you whether you're going to outlive your money or you're not. And we're going to tell you, is your financial planner doing a good job? Well, here's a report card. You can take it to them, let them answer that question. We're going to give you all of that information today on America's Healthcare Advocate. Stay tuned, listen, and learn.
And now, America's Healthcare Advocate, Cary Hall.
Hello, America. Welcome to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. You can find out more about us by going to our website, americashealthcareadvocate.com, americashealthcareadvocate.com. You know, what we say on this show is we separate fact from fiction. That's what we're really all about, typically on the subject of healthcare. Well, today, we're going to separate fact from fiction on whether you have enough money to retire. Oh, no, this is not a show where we're going to talk about retirement planning and all the rest of it. This is a show where we're going to show you an algorithm that can actually tell you, am I going to outlive my money? Have I got enough money? Is my money performing like I'm being told it's performing? Well, we'll find out all of that today, because in studio with me today is Rick Dwyer, and he is the CEO of Sagen. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you. And I think you're going to find this to be a fascinating show, because this basically is going to be a report card. If you've got a financial planner, it may be a report card on them, or it could be a report card on you if you're managing your own finances and your own stock portfolio, your own investments. So I think you're going to find this interesting. So Rick entered financial services in 1986 after serving 10 years in U.S. Navy submarine service. So I asked Rick, what was his job? Because I'm looking at his show notes early this morning at 5 o'clock, and I'm going through this. I thought, he must have been an engineer. Well, he wasn't an engineer, but he had a pretty important job. What'd you do, Rick?
Well, my job I was in was called Launch Countdown Supervisor, so I was responsible for the preparation and launch of those missiles if we were ever called upon to do so, and thankfully, we never were.
But you also served on 3 different classes of submarines. So
I did.
They were all nuclear?
They were all nuclear. I started on the Polaris, the USS Abraham Lincoln. I then went to the USS Von Steuben. The Lincoln was out of Pearl Harbor, and then the Von Steuben was out of Charleston, South Carolina. During that time, I was also received orders to the USS Michigan, which was the second Ohio class, but my orders got changed and I wound up staying on the Von Steuben through refit.
And 10 years of service.
10 years of service, yes.
Thank you for your service to this country, sir.
Well, thank you. You as well.
Rick has been a fiduciary advisor since 2011 after the financial crisis in 08 to 10. Rick saw many retirees lose everything, and I know a few of those people, and he refocused to practice to serving retirees and pre-retirees exclusively. In 2025, Rick noticed there wasn't a tool that retirees and pre-retirees could use to gauge their retirement planning. This is the part that fascinated me. I've had breakfast with this man twice. I've talked to him. I thought I got this, and I had a pretty good idea. But when I went through this morning for show notes, I was like, this is remarkable. Simply, the simplicity of it, you'll hear about that today. The way it works and how you can employ it is really pretty amazing. It's pretty much foolproof, what I saw today. He created SageonRQ.ai. Okay, by the way, that is spelled SageonRQ.ai. That's the website you can go to that has all this information. So just, first of all, where did the name come from? Because I'm looking at this morning, when we first met, the name was different, and now you've come up with this name.
Well, I mean, I needed to have a name and wanted a name that kind of talked about something that had some preeminent value that they could bring to someone. So it's a play on the word sage. So it's like a Sage AI agent, if you will. And then RQ stands for readiness quotient, but that's too long to have in the name. So that
would have been.
Yeah. So eventually once we have enough user data, people can actually get a score. So they'll actually know where they are in relationship to, say, a whole demographic of that same profile. So in other words, you go to Equifax, you get your Equifax
your
score, your experience score, et cetera. And then everybody knows their FICO score. Well, we're coming up with a SageonRQ score so that you'll know where you rank for readiness for retirement.
And you won't have to go through, compared to, you're trying to figure out your credit score, 3 different algorithms to figure out, well, I got this over here on this one, and I got this on this one, and I got this one over here on another one. So together, what are they equal? You'll have it all in one place. People don't have to do that.
Correct. And then on top of that, this is not driven by how much money you have. It's how much money do you have in relationship to what's a comfortable retirement for you. So in other words, you may only have a couple $100,000. And then someone else could have several $1 million, but the person with the several million may still not be ready for retirement because their expenses are too high, or maybe they just haven't allocated things correctly.
It's funny. I had lunch with a senior VP at one of the large insurance carriers. This is probably 2 years ago, and she was very concerned about her father, who was then living in one of the retirement facilities. He was able to drive and do things, but nonetheless, and she and her sisters were basically picking up the difference in the costs. And he had pretty good employment all of his life. And I'm like, well, Christy, what did they do with their money? Well, she kind of chuckled and she said, they just traveled a lot and they had luxury vacations all the time. And nobody thought about what was going to happen when they were all done with luxury. They thought the money was going to last, and the money didn't last. And when I was going through that, I was thinking to myself about the number of people that back when I had RPS, when I had Benefits by Design, which is now actually part of Levitt Strategic Benefits. But the number of people that we would work with life insurance, long-term care, their health insurance, all the rest of it, and they would be very sure that they were going to be just fine. And then some event would happen. Somebody got stomach cancer, or somebody had an aneurysm, or somebody had wound up with a stroke and had to be in a nursing home. And all of a sudden, the money starts going south. And so when you use that analogy, maybe the person that's got $500,000 set aside but lives very frugally, they don't have any debt, and they have a decent retirement income from Social Security and maybe a little pension or something, maybe they're just fine. But the person's got $4 million in the bank, and they're heading to Europe every year and staying in 5-star hotels and taking cruises on Seabourn, that are 50, 60, 100 grand, might have to think twice about some of that if they're in their, I'm 77. Okay. The question is, where do you start marking that? Well, actually, the time to market, and you mentioned this is in your materials, is before you ever retire.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many calls I get, and the person has already just retired or has been retired, and now they're looking to do their retirement planning. Meanwhile, they've already implemented, some decisions that they've made that they're not irretractable, but if they revolve around pensions, they are.
Yeah.
Because the moment they sign those pension documents, their flexibility is gone.
That's right. This is an opportunity that you need to listen and learn. And go up on the podcast platform. By the way, new numbers, 692,685 of you are now downloading this show. It's unbelievable. This is one you're going to want to share with your spouse, maybe your grandfather, maybe it's your father and mother. I don't know, but this is one you're going to listen to. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back and continue our conversation with the expert, Rick Dwyer. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. Don't go anywhere. Did you know that 88% of people in this country who have hearing problems do not wear hearing aids and do not get tested or treated for them? You know what? I was that guy about 5 years ago, and I went to 2 national brands and tried their hearing aids, had no customer service, and was very unhappy. Then I found Focus Hearing and Shannon Schneller, and her folks do a great job. I have hearing aids that work today. I'm wearing them right now. They make all the difference. I can go out to dinner and talk to my friends. I can go to business meetings and understand. And guess what? I don't have to look at closed caption if I want to watch television. It's Focus Hearing, and they can make a difference for you. 913-380-4200, myfocushearing.com. They can make a difference for you just like they did me. Focus Hearing. Call them. Did you know that 88% of people in this country who have hearing problems do not wear hearing aids and do not get tested or treated for them? You know what? I was that guy about 5 years ago, and I went to 2 national brands and tried their hearing aids, had no customer service, and was very unhappy. Then I found Focus Hearing and Shannon Schneller, and her folks do a great job. I have hearing aids at work today. I'm wearing them right now. They make all the difference. I can go out to dinner and talk to my friends. I can go to business meetings and understand. And guess what? I don't have to look at closed caption if I want to watch television. It's Focus Hearing, and they can make a difference for you. 913-380-4200, myfocushearing.com. They can make a difference for you just like they did me. Focus Hearing. Call them today. Welcome back to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. If you want to find out more about us, go to the website, americashealthcareadvocate.com. Hey, maybe you're intrigued by that opening and you're wondering, what's this all about? The website, SageonRQ.ai, SageonRQ.ai. That's the website. All the information is up there. You'll be amazed. This is very affordable. It's an easy thing to do. But I'm telling you, if you want an independent report card on how you're doing or how you think you're going to do, you probably ought to take a look at this. Let's go back to why you created this, Rick. I mean, you've clearly got the background for this. You've been in financial planning, worked in the markets. You've got all your licenses, the whole 9 yards. But this was a real step out. I mean, you were taking a hell of a risk here to try to create something that nobody else has. And you've basically done it.
Well, I mean, for me, I wanted something that people could use that was simple, that they didn't have to have a degree in finance or have a lot of technical backgrounds to be able to get an answer that meant something to them, whether it was them individually or them as a couple and a family. So that was the genesis of how this all came about. And it had to be easy to use, it had to be simple, but it had to be powerful enough to be meaningful at the same time. That takes a lot of work to get it to that point. What is the kind of information we want? Well, number one, the very first question most retirees have is, will my money last during my retirement? Because there's a couple forces at work. One is inflation. How bad is it going to be? We just experienced some pretty dramatic inflation.
Yes,
we're experiencing a little bit now, but right now it's more in line with traditional inflation in that 3 to 3.5% range. But you can, in our software, you can dictate or choose what level of inflation. It defaults to 3% annual, but you can change it. You can increase it or lower it. So it's up to you. You drive that ship. The second thing, are you taking care of long-term care? I've met people with millions of dollars, and I asked them, what's your plan for long-term care? Well, I'm just going to pay for it.
And I told you, this is funny. When we were on break, we had that kind, and I said, I told you about a client of mine who, her sister and the mother was in a nursing home, a decent facility where she was being taken care of. She had about $2 million when they put her in. By the time she passed away, she had less than $100,000 left. And if she had a long-term care policy, that money would have continued to grow and been passed on to her heirs, which was her desire. What she didn't know and what she didn't pay attention to was that piece. And that's critical. You just talked about a client that told you he could pay for it himself, and you said, yeah, but for 200, what was it, 280 or 200, what was the number?
200,000 roughly for him. He would have had like the best Cadillac long-term care plan that never would have run out.
Right.
And he would have transferred that risk. And the best part is, if he never used it, his heirs get the money.
Right. And that's exactly what I have, by the way. I have an infinite long-term care policy. It's not term. It's for Lori and I. The benefit's up to about $348 a day right now for each of us. And I would never let that policy lapse. It's with John Hancock. It's a great policy. I'm very fortunate to have it. I bought it, I think I was 55 or 56 years of age, because I saw what was happening.
Right.
So it's fascinating that you include that as an issue.
Well, we include it as a review element, and
Correct.
then we show them if they don't do it, if they don't have it addressed. If they do have it addressed, we'll do an analysis on that, but if they don't, we'll show them what the impact of not having it could be if one of them has an event. You know, with long-term care, the biggest concern is, oh, I'm never going to need it, right? That's the big concern. Well, I don't want to spend the money and never use it. But if you get the right type of long-term care, not only do you not give up access to the money, but you also transfer that risk in case you do need it. And as we stated already, your heirs will get the money if you never use it.
Yeah, and the beauty of the way mine is set up is that I can use part of Lori's if I need it for me. She can decide to do that, or she can use part of mine if we need to use it for her. If we need $400 a day, I can take the additional out of hers and move it back and forth. And I also have a full home health care benefit, so I don't necessarily have to go into a facility when that day comes, if that day ever comes. I doubt my daughters would let that happen anyway. But having said that, they're pretty adamant about that. But having said that, I don't want to be a burden on them and have them having to take care of my daily needs. But if I've got, $600, $700, $800 a day to use in funds, that means, my wife could never drag my 240-pounder in around the house.
Right.
Okay, so that means you're going to have somebody come in that can get me in and out of a shower, do the things that I do for my daily needs. Well, that's why you do that. And so it's foolish, I think, to just think that I'll take care of it, because you won't.
Yeah, I think flexibility is the main thing most people want. They don't want to have to go to a facility if they don't want to. They want to stay at home.
Correct.
If they can. The second reason, the second main element is what we call tax compression.
Which is interesting, because I don't think I'd even heard of this. And I understood it. I know it. I've got trust set up where I avoid all of that. I have a trust set up where all of that is completely negated. But talk about what you mean here, because basically it's spousal survival. And when you go from couples filing to individual filing, what's the surprise you get?
Your taxes effectively double. If you're in the 22% tax bracket right now, where a lot of my clients are, they're that or greater, then all of a sudden one of the spouses passes away. Now all of a sudden they're in the 32% tax bracket. Or in another case, if they are living very frugally, they may be in the 10 to 12% bracket. It's almost impossible to go single and not be in the 22% bracket at that point, because the threshold for 22% is $50,000 a year.
Yeah, well, that's not much.
That's not much at all.
Not in today's world.
Nope. So the odds that a surviving spouse who's comfortably living with her husband in the $100,000 range at 12% will almost certainly go to the 22% bracket.
And then where's that money coming from?
It's coming from the portfolio,
of course,
which eats into that even more.
Right.
So what we do, part of our report, is that you get to see what the tax savings would be, because we also analyze Roth conversions within there. If they have more advanced tax strategies, that's something that we'll probably add a little bit later.
Yeah.
But right now, we'll do an analysis on tax strategies.
And that analysis then tells them, here's what you need to prepare for. And there are ways to solve those problems. I was very fortunate. I have a very expensive lawyer who put all this together for me as part of what I do on the Tego side, where I'm one of the founding members of that company. But there are some things I learned about that I was surprised. But I have these things set up now, and that's taken care of. But for a lot of people, if they can't afford, to spend $20,000 for an attorney to put this together, which is about what I spent, then you need to think about that. And here you're giving them, they don't even know the problem exists. Yeah, and now once they meet with you and they talk with you and they see how this algorithm works, they find out how it exists. So that's an example of what we're trying to do today, to expose to you what the risks are and how you can overcome those risks and what the solutions are. So when we come back from the break, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this. How does it work? How do you get involved? What can you do? What is Rick offering? Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. Once again, that website, if you're looking for it, is SageonRQ.ai. SageonRQ.ai. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. The financial doctor is in the house. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show. broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. By the way, we are now up to an official 250 radio stations with the addition of 102.9, new station in Topeka, KCMO 102.9, part of our Cumulus family. We're very excited about that opportunity. And an opportunity to be on the air up there on another radio station. My producers today, Mr. Dave Thiessen, in studio with me, and Garner Cowdery. We do all the work on the show to get it up on the air and also get it out on the podcast and YouTube platforms. Joining me in studio, obviously, Rick Dwyer, and he is the CEO of SageonRQ.ai, and we're learning a lot today about what you need to know if you think you're set for retirement, or maybe you're thinking about retirement now and you've got a plan. Well, this might be something you really want to take a look at, because this is a report card that's going to tell you what you're being told by your financial advisor is correct or incorrect, or if you're doing it yourself, what does that look like? Or I'm going to be able to rely on my 401k and my Social Security. Maybe that's what you're going to find out by getting involved or taking a look at this. Let's just get into the nuts and bolts.
At the last segment, we started, why did we create this? And we talked about long-term care. And then we started talking about spousal tax compression.
Two pieces.
Correct. The other main item for me was most people plan retirement wrong. For example, they'll look at their portfolio and they'll say, well, I can take 4 to 5% a year out, and that's their whole plan. They just want to make sure they can do that. What they're not really taking into account is sustained drawdown. I mean, anybody that was working from 2000 to 2013 knows that the S&P didn't get back to even for 13 years.
Yep.
So if you were pulling money out during that time, you cannibalized your investment portfolio if you were living on it. So we wanted to make sure that people could see a 2008 stress test on their portfolio. So we include that as well.
Why 2008, Rick? Explain that.
Yeah, because 2008 was, when we look at 2000, it took 3 years to bottom out. When the market tanked in 2008, it started in around mid-2008, and it ended in March of 2009. And it was down.
That was a dot-com bubble.
Dot-com bubble was the first one.
Yep.
The financial crisis, though,
was the second one.
Was catastrophically fast.
Yes.
It went down 57% in about a little over 12 months.
Yes.
So very severe, very quick. And now it did come back, but it didn't get back to the same levels of 2000 until 2013.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Which was 13 years ago. But it was a cycle. The point, who knew, right? And if you were sitting there and you just got wiped out or lost 30% or 20% or whatever it was of your portfolio, it's panic time now.
Most people don't think the markets will stay down, period, for any length of time. Normally it's 1 year, sometimes a little over, but it doesn't reflect in the numbers.
Right.
2000, 2003 was the first time we had around a 3-year, 2000, 01, 02. We had 3 years of down.
Yeah.
And that's only happened 3 times. 2008 was severe from a numbers standpoint, but not unusual from a market standpoint. The reason I like to use that period of time is because it's unique that it was back to back the way it went, and that the market didn't really gain for 13 years. And it's in our lifetime, so people have relevance. They just forget about it. They don't think about it.
Right.
And we make sure they think about it, because it is a reality that can happen. And what I meant earlier when I started this segment was that when I say people don't look at retirement correctly, it's an integrated approach. If all you look is at the market and you ignore taxes, you ignore inflation, you ignore market risk, you are missing the whole point of retirement planning. It's an integrated approach. Any change in one of those will impact the other ones, either positively or negatively. And you have to look at it from that perspective. So we take a fully integrated approach, which is what most people never do. And so when they use SageonRQ, they're going to be entering their information. So when they first get to the site, they log in, they register, they enter in their information. They can be as detailed or as general as they want. Obviously, the more detailed they are, the more information they're going to get, the more reliable it'll be. Eventually, in about 60 days, we'll be launching the ability for them to do an online risk assessment and they'll be able to upload their statements if they choose to. They don't have to. They just give a bulk number. But if they want real accuracy, they'll be able to upload their statements, and we'll analyze their statements and compare the market side of their the portfolio risk tolerance to their perceived risk tolerance. And I can tell you from experience, they rarely ever match.
That doesn't surprise me. So 2 things I want to make sure the audience understands. Number 1, your data, your information, when he talks about, I could just see my wife the minute I say, let's send in all of our financial documents. The minute she's going to say to me, how do we know that's safe? How do we know they're not going to sell that? So answer that we talked about before the show, talk about how that's secure and that never gets sold or used for any other purposes.
Yep, absolutely. So we don't sell or share any of our data. We don't take any of this data. We don't remarket to other advisors. So if you're concerned you're going to register and you're going to get hounded by a lot of advisors trying to get your business, that's not what this is for. This is for you. This is your information. If you want to take the report to an advisor, feel free, because we do market this service to advisors. We do not market leads to advisors. That data stays on our Amazon servers. It's fully encrypted with bank level security, just like everybody else's bank level security is at. It never leaves. It's not stored on our internal servers. It's all done on Amazon servers. So your data is safe. We don't resell it. We don't do anything with it other than analyze it for you.
And they're not required to move their business to you to be able to use this. You just said, if you want to take these reports and go to your financial advisor, then you need to do that. But what you're doing here is you're giving an unbiased picture, actually, data-driven picture of what actually, where they're at, what could happen if there's a recession, a big one like we had in 08, okay, or a pullback in the market, whatever the case may be. But you're giving them actual data based on the information they're putting in. Am I correct about that?
You are. And it's also a stress test. So we'll do a stress test for 2008 so they can see what that's like. And we'll also show them if one of their, if it's a couple, if one of them passes away at age 78, what is the impact? What's the tax impact going to be on the surviving spouse? The income should normally be okay, but we'll double check that, because if the pension income doesn't have a spousal benefit, and if the Social Security and the spousal benefit is not enough to carry, then they have to withdraw more money out of the portfolio, and we will stress test that and let them know what the survivability is for that surviving spouse.
So that's interesting. So it begs the question, what happens if they're in a pension program in a state that's going broke? And I'll use Illinois as a classic example.
Yeah.
And then Lori has a very dear friend that she grew up with, childhood friend, who worked for the state of California for years in the state's attorney's office. And one of their biggest concerns is California has got a lot of problems right now, and that money is separated in CalPERS, but is there enough money there to fund it out? The answer to that question is actually today there isn't. Illinois is completely upside down. Do you take those possible factors into the equation if there's a way for them to pull money out early for less and it's bulk or something along those lines, Rick?
Yeah, we do not. That's outside of the scope of what we do. We take their data that we have that's available today. And the other thing, we can't do that. But the other thing I think is important to note is we don't forecast, for example, what future tax rates are going to be. Everything is based on what it is today. When those rates change, both at the state and the federal level, they're updated in our system as well.
Yeah, I was surprised to see, before we go to break here, you said that tax rates today are currently favorable. Now, that's an interesting comment in the anti-tax environment we live in today, where the state of Missouri, for example, is talking about doing away with income tax, like Texas, like Florida, like Washington, like some of the other states that have, like Nevada, that have no state tax. So talk a little bit about that, because that's kind of interesting.
Well, I think state tax is a different animal, because depending on what state you are in, you may not have any taxes. Correct. Or you may have very low taxes. So we're really talking about, or I'm talking about, when I say we're in a low tax environment from the federal level, you have to go back to the late 1920s to get an equivalent level to where we are right now. So it's almost 100 years. So here's a final thought for everybody right now. If you have a large pre-tax account, Do you just want to wait the next 15, 20, 30 years of your retirement to see if tax rates ever go up, or should you be proactive in doing some conversions? We will show you what that outcome will look like, and you can make that decision. But I think people not taking advantage of the low tax environment we're in right now are really missing an opportunity.
We come back to the break. I'm going to ask him to expand on that. And I know from the notes I did this morning, we're going to talk a little bit about Roth IRAs and what he thinks of Roth versus the current situation. We'll be right back after the break. By the way, the website, fascinating stuff, right? SageonRQ.ai. Go to that website. All the information is up there. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. By the way, if you do have a question, please send me an email. I get them. I had a couple this week where I had to help some people with insurance for their daughters, etc. I'm happy to refer you and get you somebody that can help you. Typically, the people over at Levitt Strategic Benefits will be the ones I'll recommend you to. That'll be Maria Allers and Carol Lee Steele and Jacqueline over there who do a great job. So if you need help, go to the website, americashealthcareadvocate.com. Back in studio with me, Rick Dwyer, and he is from SageonRQ.ai. They have created this fascinating algorithm and program where you can actually see if you're going to outlive your money. Are you planning, if you're just turning 65 or you're just retiring at 55, maybe you're retiring early, do you actually move some of that money to that's currently in your accounts to another type of account for tax reasons? And so off air, Rick told a story about one of his clients. So just tell that story, because it's about the Roth IRAs and why that may or may not be a good idea.
The amount of money that you have pre-tax can dictate a couple things. One of them is obviously your tax rate, and the second is IRMA. And IRMA is an amount that if your income exceeds a certain threshold, both at the single and married level, that you have to pay additional Medicare Part B and D premiums.
Yes, it does. And I'm fully aware of that because I'm paying it.
Yeah. We analyzed to see if the conversions Roth conversions would impact IRMA, if there's going to be an IRMA impact, and for how long. And so that's part of the report as well. And the reason that's important to know is that once it kicks in, it lasts for 2 years if your income drops again, which if you're doing it primarily through conversions, it will drop at one point, and then IRMA will follow for another 2 years, and then you're done. So we had a client, and he had a net worth of about $12 million, about $8 million or so in the market, a little over $3 million in IRA accounts. His wife passed away this year.
That changes everything.
It does. He goes from married filing joint to single. We talked about that previously.
Yep.
So now, just on his general income, what he receives from Social Security, pension, and then his dividend income on his portfolio puts him in the $220,000 to $250,000 a year range. So he's already way up there. RMDs will just exacerbate that problem dramatically. So we talked about it, and he's very open to doing that, but he said, you know, what should we do? Should we do it over, 4 or 5 years or 10 years? Or now, just to keep in mind, he's 74 years old.
Yeah, so he's 3 years younger than I am.
Correct. So we did the analysis using Sagen, and the best outcome for him was to do it all in 1 year.
Now.
Right away.
That's amazing.
So when you think about it, it's on that rate, he's going to be converting $3 million. That's a $1.4 million tax bill. So that's hard to swallow a little bit.
Big time.
But he's got the liquidity from his TOD account. So
right.
He's going to use that money, and effectively he's transferring $1.2 million from his TOD account to his Roth account, because all that Roth money now stays there.
And that Roth money is tax-free, which is the reason why you do it.
So it's going to reduce his dividend income, because now $1.2 million just transferred effectively to his Roth account, and it'll grow there, all tax-free.
And if he hadn't done that, it would have done what?
Well, his account would have continued to grow. So if let's just say he's only getting 6% growth on $3 million, he's generating $180,000 a year. He doesn't need the money. But his RMDs are going to keep increasing every single year, and that
Correct.
tax problem becomes enormous. So The difference in the legacy value for his heirs was $15 million.
You see why I do these shows? You see why I have people on here like Rick? When I talked about your financial health, that's what this is about. And this man is an expert. And that's why after we had 2 breakfast meetings together, talked about this several times on conference calls, etc. I was convinced that this was going to be a worthwhile effort. And when I went through these show notes this morning, I was absolutely floored by what I learned and what I saw. The website, if you're interested, SageonRQ.ai. That's SageonRQ.ai. The point is, I said this when we opened this show. When your grandchildren come home at the end of each semester, you want to know what their grade cards were, right? You know, when you were working, you got an evaluation every year, right? Okay, well, you know, I know what you're hearing from your financial planner. Maybe it's right. Maybe it's not. Maybe there are things you can do that would make it better. Maybe your financial planner would like to look at that report, which you heard Rick say earlier. Take it to them and let them review it. Or maybe you do it yourself and you just want to know what it looks like. Or you're getting ready for retirement. You're not there. Here's what we think we're going to do. Are we going to outlive our money? That's the big question. What this does, as far as I'm concerned, is when you ask retirees what's their biggest fear, I'm going to outlive my money. Am I right?
That's the first one. Yep.
Yeah, that's the first one. And that's the biggest one. Am I going to outlive my money? Okay, the second one is probably how's your health? Okay, that's the other one, okay, because we start to face some challenges as we start to age. But if you have a level of comfort about where you're going to be when you retire as you go on, then you're living life the way you want to live it. What you can do, you know what recreational activities, vacations, all the rest of it, how much money I can spend, what can I do? You've got a financial planner. I'm sure they tell you all of that. Maybe you would like to see a report card on how well they're doing, which means how well you're doing. And maybe if you're doing it on your own, you really ought to take a look at this. And if you're pre-retirement age, I strongly suggest you take advantage of the offer that Rick is making. It's free. That initial report is free. You can go up there, do the information. Remember, they don't sell it. It's strictly your data, and they don't reselling that data. And if you want to engage with them for further services, they can do that, correct?
Yeah, but we don't actually even have a button for that. This is really meant as a report just for them and their advisor. That is it. We're not reselling, and we're not trying to grab their business either.
There you go. I mean, I don't know how much more forward and honest thinking than it gets than that. Okay, this is to give you the report. You do what you will with it. Once again, the website, SageonRQ.ai, SageonRQ.ai. Thank you very much. It was great having you in here today.
Thank you, Cary.
And now I leave you with this thought from Albert Einstein. The one who follows the crowd will usually get no further than the crowd. The one who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever been. Remember, friends, it's a funny thing about life. If you refuse to accept anything but the very best, you most often get it. Thank you for listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. Goodbye, America.